Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Office Bloke Daz.
I'm Gaynor.
I'm Office Bloke Aidan.
Here we are, all three of us. If Patreon's your thing, check out the link in the description below. Loads and loads of stuff on there. Full watch-alongs to things like Modern Family, Always Sunny in Philadelphia, which is very funny. But there's loads of stuff on there as well, so check it out. Starts just $3 a month, yeah. Texas has a people problem. Here's why.
Everyone moving there or something.
I was going to say, I thought a lot of people were moving there.
Is it a people problem because you can't get the right kind of people to move there?
Don't know.
I know it is big enough, really, isn't it?
It's a massive place.
Yeah.
A lot of Californians have gone.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are migrating to Texas anyway, just purely based on the fact of what it's offering. I think there's a lot to offer down there as well, isn't it? Climate's quite nice for the most part of the year, I think. And I think a lot of the big companies are moving their headquarters down there.
Cheaper.
So the state must be giving incentives for tax reasons. So, but let's see what the problem
Texas is one of the industrial and economic powerhouses of the U.S. If it was allowed to secede from the country, it would certainly be able to thrive alone. However, that doesn't make it immune to population and societal issues, some of which are unique to the state while others plague the nation as a whole. Let's dig into why the Lone Star State might not be as perfect as you think. First off, it's undeniable that Texas is one of the fastest growing states in the country. The census data from 2010 onwards suggests that the population is growing at a rate of roughly 1.5% per year. In total, the population of Texas increased by more than 19% between 2010 and 2022, compared to the national average of only 7.7% across all states. In fact, between July 2022 and July of 2023, Texas accounted for 30% of the nation's total population growth. Out of the 1.6 million people the U.S. gained as a whole, just over 470,000 of them became Texas residents. The state celebrated crossing the 30 million population threshold in 2022. Of course, California remains the most populous state with roughly 39 million citizens at the time, but Texas's population is increasing at the cost of California's. So let's start with how Texas managed to grow. There are three main avenues for how the population can grow in the US. The first one is natural, the result of the difference between births and deaths in the state itself. On that front, Texas is doing relatively well. Even though there were fewer recorded births in the state during 2022 than the previous year, there were even fewer recorded deaths in the state as well, giving Texas an overall positive replacement rate. But
I found that when we lived in Texas, people were having children younger.
Than when we was in New Jersey, you mean?
Yeah, in New Jersey, the average age was 28 to 31.
Was it that old?
Yeah, I think, Whereas when I moved there, when I went to school, a lot of the parents were younger.
You're not talking about actual statistics, you're talking about what you think you're seeing?
Yeah.
Yeah, right, okay. I thought you meant actual statistics. I was going to say, I'm not sure that might be...
No, I found that the parents started having children younger. They were like 23, 24.
Yeah, younger parents were in Texas, in Houston, when we were there. Yeah, I kind of agree with that.
Gaynor studies.
Yeah.
natural population growth only accounts for between 25 and 30% of the new population each year. The other two avenues are much more vital and are due to immigration, international and intranational. The first is relatively obvious, counting new citizens that come from other countries. International migration in Texas accounts for roughly 40% of all migration, roughly 20% of the total population growth. Perhaps the most important reason behind Texas's explosive population growth is migration within the US, which is also why California is losing citizens. The single largest flow of people moving between states in 2022 happened between California to Texas, with almost 100,000 movers going from the former to the latter. Some of the most common reasons why US citizens want to move to Texas include the relative affordability of houses and utilities, lack of taxes, and a different political sphere. Compared to California, for example, Texas has roughly 20% lower utility costs, owing to the fact that Texas is a significant electricity, oil, and gas producer across the US, and the median house value in 2021 was nearly half that of California's. Of course, there's a matter of politics, considering California has been a blue state for a while Texas has remained largely red, despite much of the western United States turning blue for years. The last part is largely due to the fact that Texas is massive. It's by far the biggest state in the contiguous US, with significant swaths of both urban and rural areas, which is a nightmare we'll talk about later, and not nearly as lopsided an urban to rural population ratio as California. While Texas is still considered a majority-minority state, with overwhelming Republican support across the board. 180 out of the 254 counties in Texas have moved closer to the Republican side. While that's still in favor of the majority, it tells us that a significant number of counties are still leaning left. So
it's funny that, isn't it? When you talk politics, I mean, we try to sort of steer away from the majority of politics and what we talk about. But in the UK, you don't really move somewhere based on the political persuasion.
No.
You know what I mean? There's certain areas which are more poverty stricken that you sort of like you'd go when you know that that's like a specific party or a specific.
I don't know. Would you not say the north is more red and the south is more blue?
Possibly, yeah, possibly. I mean, they have like the Red Wall, which is up in the north of England. It's a very sort of like red area, sort of like from, I would probably say, Stoke upwards, across maybe
like
Birmingham.
When I used to go to school, I just used to see roads and roads of signs, vote Labour, vote Labour, vote Labour.
Yeah, you do, and it's especially. And then
I've never seen a blue one.
Well, they did turn blue, didn't they? For when Boris sort of like come in, sort of like they went blue there. They sort of like changed some sort of like predominantly red wall areas into blue.
Yeah.
When Boris came in, and they quickly went back to red after Boris bumbled it all open and stuff like that. But I don't think you'd move somewhere. A lot of people won't move somewhere just because of the political persuasion.
No.
They'd make their own, because we don't have the same sort of like tax laws and stuff like that in different states, like different states do compared to what we do. You know, from counties over here, it's very similar.
Yeah.
Right across the board.
why is this important? Well, while we mentioned the overwhelming population growth in Texas, it also bears elaborating that this growth skews away from small regions. Counties that belong to the state's major population centers of Houston, Dallas-Fort Worth, Austin, and San Antonio typically see the highest growth rates. On the other hand, over 90 counties, mostly in the South and the West, have actually lost population over the last few years. This can create a situation where some areas will see a significant shift in the discrepancy between local and national politics and how it shapes representation. Additionally, the rapidly rising urban population has led to the cost of living skyrocketing in the cities. According to the Texas Comptroller of Public Accounts, the average house price in Texas rose by over 40% between 20.
A lot of people are saying on previous videos we've done on Texas about the pricing going up, how the increase, the cost of living's going right up to live there.
It would do, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I guess it's supply and demand, isn't it? But I guess if you're into these big cities as well, you know, your Dallas, your Houston, San Antonio.
If you want to move to a place where everyone's going, it's not just going to stay cheap.
No, it's going to increase, isn't it? I wonder where the next boom place is going to be. Yeah.
2019 and 2023, but the cities have it much worse, with the Houston area seeing price increases of 128% over that same period. That means that the price of an average home in Houston has more than doubled within just 4 years. By contrast, incomes that qualified for a mortgage of an average home rose by...
Imagine buying a house 4 years ago and now selling it.
Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah, it's well, that's one of them. You don't know where the growth's going to be. It's always the gamble in it. What you do could go either way.
So if you still had your house in Houston, you'd
right?
be proper rich.
Be laughing. I know, right? Be laughing.
By only 45% in the area. The main causes? The aforementioned population increases, housing shortages, and different work policies. The COVID-19 pandemic caused a significant shift towards work-from-home policies. In 2020 and 2021, it was one of the main reasons why so many Californians moved to Texas, with cheaper house prices being the major contributor. Overall, roughly 16% of Texans worked from home as of 2021, compared to only 6% before the pandemic started. This has allowed many more suburban areas to thrive, typically at the expense of the already congested cities. With the rise of online work, you'd think that more Texans would be in favor of leaving the congested cities and moving to more rural areas. However, that doesn't seem to be the case. The current major population centers in Texas are all supported by an extensive infrastructure network and have extremely developed industries, both in the tech and energy sectors, perhaps two of the most significant drivers behind Texas becoming an economic powerhouse of the U.S. As a result, the rest of the state is relatively disconnected from the center. One of the examples where infrastructure matters is that Texas is one of the states that sees significant impact from hurricanes. Hurricane Beryl caused 36 deaths and significant
Especially
property
Houston.
damage.
Yeah.
But even regular storms can leave Texas
It's more Galveston, places like that. They're sort of like coastal areas.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
They
but
get hit.
Houston's right there,
Yeah.
not it?
Yeah, it's not far, yeah.
wanting for basic utilities. Case in point, Texas experienced 210 instances of major electrical outages, affecting more than 50,000 people between 2020 and 2023. By contrast,
That's a lot,
the next
isn't it?
highest on that dubious list is California with 145, and that state has its own share of problems. In addition, Beryl hit Houston, one of the state's largest cities, which is already well positioned to handle infrastructure issues. The more rural areas don't really stand a chance. But not all infrastructure is made equal. The Texan government allocates the state's budget differently depending on whether communities or counties are predominantly urban or rural. In the 2020 census, the U.S. government slightly changed the requirements for whether a municipality is considered urban or rural, resulting in some 4.2 million people across the country becoming rural citizens without moving. According to these new guidelines, Texas remains the state with the largest number of citizens living in rural areas, at roughly 7 million. Ultimately, this creates a tricky situation for the state government. A state like California, with more than 90% urban population, can easily allocate significant resources for urban planning, particularly infrastructure and city services. On the other hand, Texas has a rural population closer to Maryland, which is 27 times smaller in land area while containing about a fifth of Texas's population. Just let those two numbers sink in a bit. The Texan government needs to connect counties that are much farther apart to service all of its citizens, and the cities still represent a significant population portion of the state to make that possible. Still, ignoring the problems of rural communities leaves 7 million citizens left out in the cold. To put this into perspective, a state with 7 million people, Massachusetts, is the 15th most populous state in the U.S. But despite these issues, one of Texas's biggest problems is housing and how it's regulated. According to 2019 estimates, Texas was 330,000 housing units short of what would be ideal for the state's population number.
How does everyone have housing shortages across the world?
Yeah.
Every country you see housing shortage, housing shortage. We've got a massive one over here.
Yeah.
There's more people
Yeah.
being born than there is houses being built.
Possibly, but it's all a migration as well. If you've got the
Yeah, more
migration
people
and growth.
coming into the country than houses being built.
Yeah.
With only California going through a bigger housing crisis. The 2024 estimate isn't much better, at 306,000 units short. The government has two issues that it needs to tackle to remedy this. The first problem is the rising housing costs. As mentioned, some cities have experienced unparalleled housing cost increases over the last few years, and the trend doesn't seem to be slowing down. But perhaps the bigger issue is one related to Texas zoning laws and minimal plot sizes for homes. In a city, this directly contributes to rising housing costs, since investors will ultimately make a house on a larger plot to retain that traditional setting of a home with a large yard, which means a higher cost. Apart from increasing the cost of the house, plot sizes have also been linked to racial segregation by the way of making them unattainable for low-income families of color. Plot sizes also directly impact city infrastructure. Larger homes mean that a municipality can have only so many of them in an area, which limits population density for higher cost housing. Additionally, the city architecture itself begins sprawling outwards, creating larger, less walkable cities that only increase the need for cars or complicated public transport and lead to a rise in carbon emissions. Some cities have started working on the issue. Houston, for example, has a minimal lot size of only 1,400 square feet. This can permit tens of thousands of new housing units to be built inside the city or the creation of more urban areas that directly connect to it. The state as a whole has arguably not made much headway in this regard. While the Houston change is a boon, it happened way back in 2013. other parts of the state have yet to follow through, usually due to the aforementioned issue of lack of bipartisan support across counties. However, a bigger issue is perhaps that the state government simply hasn't spent enough on public housing. Texas has come 49th in the U.S. in housing expenditure as a share of its overall budget, ranking only slightly above Nebraska.
You'd have thought a state that size with that kind of like people sort of like influx into the state, you'd be number one, wouldn't you?
State with only 2 million people. This neatly outlines the biggest issue with Texas's people problem. Unlike many other states, the people of Texas live too far apart and in conditions too varied. The red-blue political divide across counties makes implementing statewide laws difficult, and the previous notion of Texas being affordable has all but disappeared. Even if the government creates a solution, the sheer size and scale of the problem will take years to get implemented. By that time, Texas might no longer be the second most populous state, but instead the first, and it will bear significantly more pressure. But what do you think? Leave your thoughts and ideas.
Yeah, I agree with that. It looks like it's on the pathway to becoming the most populous state, which kind of makes sense when you think. I mean, when you look at California, you've got quite a bunch. We were talking about this the other day about the volume of cities that you've got in certain states, and you look at like California, you've got a bunch of major cities. When you look at New York, and you think outside of New York City, you start naming other big cities. I can only really think of maybe Buffalo. Is that classic? Is that really Rochester? You've got Syracuse, places like that. Are they big cities? Do you know what I mean? But they're as big as like San Francisco, Los Angeles.
Same with Texas. Texas is massive. Only has 4. Really?
Yeah, but it has 4 major cities. 4 very big cities.
Yeah, I know, but in the size of like...
The size of it.
The size of how big it is.
You could put like 20 in there.
Oh yeah, I mean you could say that about places like Alaska as well. You know, you can put sort of like
Well, no, not really, because that's a different sort of climate.
Yeah, it is. But it's you look at other states. I mean, I was thinking Florida, and you think Miami, Jacksonville, and then you start thinking where else? Orlando. But are they as big as Dallas? Or are they big as Houston, or are they as big as Austin, or places like I don't know. I'm not sure on the actual stats of them all, but Texas seems to have them big cities that are just expanding and building.
Yeah.
Whereas California's already got them; they're already in place. And I'm thinking when you go to places like New York or Florida, places like they're not as populous. Maybe that's just my overtake on it. It's like they don't seem to be as an outsider looking in. But again, I guess when they say there about politics taking care, we do have similar over here with councils. Like local councils being run by different, who might not be in power, and then the different views come on, and then the government doesn't cascade down into the councils what it should be doing because they're not the same party. So you do get political sort of like divide with different areas, but you never really move there on the worry that what's going to happen there.
You don't.
You know, it doesn't affect us as much as it probably would affect the US population. You know, with that kind of stuff. But interesting video that. I like stuff. I love stuff knowing about because that's obviously where we're probably going to retire to.
Yeah.
What, Texas?
USA.
All right.
So wherever it is in the USA, we're still looking for our dream spot sort of thing.
Well, let me know where you're going soon so I can go the complete opposite side.
The plan was not to let you know.
Oh, okay. Well, you just did it just slip out? Did not mean to do that.
That's why I said the USA. Kept it very broad.
Yeah. Well, that is it. California. I'm in Florida, mate.
No, it's going to be Alaska.
Good. I'm definitely in Florida.
Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed that. Don't forget like and subscribe. We'll see you on the next one.
Bye.
Cheers.